Yo, what's up guys, it's Schizomanic here to bring you another discussion video. And this one's probably going to be another meta video, which means most of you won't give a shit. But I think it's something interesting, and I want to give a shout out to that anime snob. It's because of his video that kind of inspired me to make this one. Because he made a video, I wouldn't say, what was that? Kind of recently, probably like a little bit like around 2 weeks ago. He made a video, a critical review or critical analysis of Medaka Box, and it was funny because it was like, well, that's like the most mainstream attention that Medaka Box will ever get. And I thought it was interesting because it kind of, to me, started making me think about, well, why is it that like Medaka Box never really caught on, like period. Like it seemed to do well enough in Shonen Jump for it to be able to get finished properly. Because I wouldn't say Medaka Box has like a rush ending; it's a full, complete story. But considering it's made by Niso Isin, which is the creator of the Monogatari series, and the anime was adapted by Gainax, and it was a pretty faithful adaptation. And it was well animated. What's the problem? Why didn't the series catch on? And he kind of outlined it by kind of highlighting what the main problem was. And the main problem is Medaka herself. Now, for those who haven't read Medaka Box or watched Medaka Box, you don't know. Even if you watch Medaka Box, you wouldn't know. Medaka Box, probably around the third arc, around the minus arc or the not equal arc, is when you really start understanding that Medaka Box is essentially a deconstruction of shonen anime. The problem, and I think one of the key reasons why the anime in the series suffers and doesn't have the same type of mainstream success it should have, is because Medaka Box, unfortunately, has the main problem of your main character being boring as shit. I've made no qualms about saying this in the past, that I hated the first season of Medaka Box. Like, absolutely hated it. To me, and considering I've read the whole series now, I can easily say it's the weakest arc. And to me, it doesn't even serve as a good introduction arc. Because of how Medaka Box is written. And the main reason why I don't like the first season, and the reason why the first season almost turned me off of the whole series, is because of Medaka herself. If anyone knows me, or at least watched the season, you would know Medaka comes off as this pretentious, perfect girl. Like, the bitch can do no wrong, but she's like, and she fucking thinks she understands everyone to a T, which is a part of the gag, because one of her running gags in the beginning, and technically I would say it's just a personality flaw in general, is that she tries to guess the problem that's going on with the person, and she never gets it right. She never even gets close, and that's kind of if anything, that was a hint for what things were, that were about things that were coming on later on. Now, I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to spoil it, but all I'm going to say is, as far as the plot's concerned, but I'm going to say that in later arcs, it kind of gets more explained, and we kind of delve deeper into why Medaka is the way she is, and why she conducts herself in a certain manner. The second season kind of touches into it, but doesn't really go as deep as we need to go. But I'm still thinking, like, well, I mean, it has good character designs. The battle system is pretty different, which unfortunately isn't introduced until the second season. The character designs are good. The music was good. I mean, like, it didn't really have anything it really failed in. But I think the biggest problem is Medaka herself. If for someone who's read the entire series, I can openly tell you, Medaka as a character doesn't get inherently interesting until, like, the fourth arc. Like, the third arc, she's just kind of there. She's fine, but there's nothing, like, really great or bad about her in the third arc. But she doesn't become an interesting character until, like, around the fourth and fifth arc. And the problem is that, like, that's your main character. Like, there are other characters who were allowed that leniency to a degree, but not your main fucking character. And the people will be like, well, the second arc kind of explains why she is the way she is. Yeah, but nothing about her as a character changes. Like, there's no real development there. It's really just justification. The situation was just a justification for us to see a backstory. And the backstory isn't even, like, overly interesting to begin with. She doesn't become an interesting character, a truly interesting character, until like the next few arcs. And it's your main character. The other problem is that the first season is so basic as fuck. Like, and I get why. That's the problem. Is that, like, I get what Niso Ising was trying to do and why he wrote the story in this way, because if he didn't, then the shit that comes out later wouldn't hit as hard. The problem is that it unfortunately makes your character uninteresting from the get-go. And considering it's the beginning of the season, it's the first season, you need to at least give me a reason why I should give a damn about this character. And the problem is by the time we hit the oozing stuff at the end of the first season, I don't really care about Medaka winning. At this point, I want her to lose. And it's like, it's the first season. I'm like, well, she's not going to, because it's the beginning of the series. And then B, because it's the main character. So it's like, well, that's just unsatisfying as fuck. And then, as I said, the first season is just slice of life shit. There's really no real shonen aspects to it until like near the end of the season. Until like the last, I would say, 2 episodes. 2, if that. And that's part of the fucking problem. You give me this series that has a lot of interesting stuff that comes out later, but the way you introduce me to the series is by the boring, by the numbers, basic as fuck structure of a high school slice of life series. And then on top of that, my main character for the most part is annoying as shit. She's a perfect girl and pretentious, so she just comes off as annoying as shit. So, like, she never, like, because most people would say the main character is the driving force of a series. And Medaka doesn't really even come close to fulfilling that goal until, like, I don't know. Really, until, like, the latter half of the series. And it's like, well, that's part of the reason why the series doesn't have the kind of promotion and love that it really... Because I think the series is better than what people give it credit for. But it stumbles so much in the beginning, it's like, well, fuck. Because you know how like people like to say, oh, well, you watch such and such episodes, and then it gets good. Well, like, with Medaka, you would easily have to start talking to, like, second season. Like, I would almost argue you could skip the first season and not miss anything important. The only thing you're missing is character introductions, but you could just wiki that shit. Like, you don't really need to see any of the first season stuff. Maybe the Uzin fight at the end, but that's about it. And even then, it's not to that degree that it's that important. I mean, just to kind of give context, because the next arc that the anime never got to would have been the minus arc, which is where Kumagawa was introduced, which you saw at the end of season 2. The next arc is the not equal arc, which is the Ashino arc, which is another character that you've seen references to. Have you seen? I'm trying to remember. I don't know if I don't think they've animated her, but they've referenced her in the second season. Maybe I might be bullshitting. I don't know. It's been a minute since I've watched the second season. And then like after that, it's the Jet Black wedding arc, and then after that, it's the Shiranui arc. And like, I wouldn't say you start finding Medaka interesting until around the not equal arc, and even in that arc. The shit doesn't really... It's more interesting for Zenkichi and everyone else until about the end where Medaka becomes interesting. And then after that, like in Jet Black Wedding, that's when you start really liking Medaka. Which is a fucking bad situation. Not saying it's absolutely horrible before, but I'm saying like it's your main character. Your main character doesn't become appealing until like the 4th arc in. 5th actually. The 5th arc in. She didn't become... No, it's the 4th. I'm lying. It's the 4th. Yeah, it's the 4th arc in. She didn't become interesting until the 4th arc. And that's a shame. It's a shame. Because I think he could have done it better. On top of that, it's also because most of the problems... Honestly, the other thing is that Medaka kind of suffers from not having a story plotline that's overtly interesting, and she ends up getting outshined by better characters in other arcs. Like, for example, when Kumagawa was introduced, most fans of Medaka Box will tell you they love Kumagawa. You want to know why they love Kumagawa? Because Kumagawa essentially steals the fucking show the moment he's introduced. From, like, the moment he's introduced to the end of the series, people love Kumagawa. Even though the minus arc is about Kumagawa and Medaka, people mainly just like that arc for Kumagawa. Not equal arc, even though it's about Medaka, is more about everybody else but Medaka. Medaka doesn't really get any real development until near the end of it. You start understanding her more throughout the arc, but you don't really get any development from Medaka until the end of it. And then in Jet Black Wedding is when she finally starts growing on you. You're like, all right, she's fine now. But it's your main character. And that's the problem. It's like I can sit there and say I like Medaka Box, but that's also because I had the will and wherewithal to keep going through the series. If you don't want to do that, I wouldn't blame you, because Medaka Box is kind of a chore to get through in the beginning. And it's partially also because Medaka Box isn't overtly interesting in the way it presents its fights. The biggest problem with Medaka Box in terms of its fights is the fact that a lot of them are more like mental fights, especially in the later arcs, than they are physical fights. And it becomes a situation where it's just kind of like, well, here we go again, and instead of like, ooh, I wonder how this is going to play out. And it's a shame because, as I said, Medaka Box is actually a pretty enjoyable series all around. It just takes way too fucking long to get there. And Medaka probably will never have the mainstream success I think it probably needs more of, because of how bad it bombed in Japan. Because think of it, it's fucking Gainax. It wasn't like that show was animated or adapted poorly. It was adapted really well, and it only got 2 seasons, and like we heard nothing of it again. I haven't even heard about them grabbing the manga for a Medaka Box. And I think it's because Medaka Box is one of those series that has I probably would say one of the more annoying entries and barriers. And the other problem is that, like, to enjoy the later arcs of Medaka, specifically, I would argue minus and not equal. To enjoy those 2 arcs, you kind of need the beginning. You need the first 2 arcs. Specifically the second arc. Maybe not the first arc as much. The first arc kind of more just sets the tone. So I thought it was interesting because she's a Shonen Jump hero that, like, was able to get a full series in. It didn't feel like the series was rushed at all, but, like, literally has no real success. But Medaka Box is, ironically enough, this feels like a niche shonen that kind of has a following. I would almost argue, I can't think of another shonen that hits that weird mix of, like, popular enough to get adapted, but not popular enough to continue the adaptation, but popular enough to keep relevance long enough to finish a story out, but, like, people don't give a shit about her. Because even when the anime was coming out, I don't remember anyone really talking about her like that. Like, Medaka, unfortunately, hits that bad area of, like, it's a little bit too niche, but not mainstream enough. Like, it's weird, because it has elements of both. And also because the first season it leaves a really bad impression. I think that's what hurt her the most. That first season leaves a really shitty impression of her. And it's just like, And the second season's improvement, but it's like, most anime series start off with your main character being likable, which I wouldn't say happens until, like, maybe the second season. But I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. So please leave yours in the comment section below. Like, subscribe. I would say check out the anime. You'll probably enjoy the second season more than the first season. But anyways, this has been Schizomanic. Life's a game. Play to win. And I will catch you guys later. Peace off.